Hello and welcome to this special episode. I'm your host Lex Gordon, broadcasting from the Jungle Villa Outpost deep in the uncharted tropics. This is Renegade Files episode 67, The Trump Shooting, Thomas Matthew Crooks, and Many Questions. As you know, the Renegade Files podcast rarely does emergent news stories or bleeding edge current events, and that's for two reasons. First, interest in those topics fades quickly. And secondly, I honestly don't watch much mainstream news. But here we have a situation where we all watched an assassination attempt unfold before our eyes, or at least on our watch, and the immediate response from a large, bipartisan cross-section of the population was a long list of obvious questions. This was followed by more information chaos and confusion online than I have ever seen, and that's saying something. Right away, my first question was, who is this guy, Thomas Matthew Crooks, who they say shot Trump and is now as dead as Dillinger? So I started looking into who the guy is, or was, and right away, I see the director of the U.S. Secret Service in a news interview saying they didn't have security on that roof where this alleged assassin was because the roof was sloped and that it was a safety concern, too dangerous for the agents. I know that's old news now, but hearing that from her mouth for the first time was shocking. It is classic bureaucratic CYA, especially since we had all seen pictures of that rooftop and it's barely sloped at all, virtually flat. But this is just the intro, and we're going to get into all that and more. So I started digging into all these facts and guesses and anomalies and accusations surrounding exactly what happened on that day when Trump was shot in the ear on the stage at a rally, and this was at a time when I would normally be making a new Renegade Files episode. And the more I looked, the weirder things got, so I decided to make this episode to try to collect some answers and put all of this into some kind of order. Because I felt that there must be many people like me who are also trying to make sense of this. My thought is that this story has become such a whirlwind of conflicting claims and unbelievable truths that we could all benefit from putting as much credible information on the shooting and its aftermath into one place. So this episode is my attempt to do that. This also makes the episode different than the norm here, and sometimes that's a good thing. I'm going to go over the timelines and facts and details you may not have heard, but the way I'm going to cover the information is from the notes and online bookmarks I've collected since the shooting, the research I've done. So this will be less structured, but no less informative. And by the end, my hope is that we have a better picture of what's going on here, because, fair warning, this gets weird. I'm also not going to edit out every mistake, so there may be some bumps along the way, but nothing terrible. I'm just going to take my time, and we're going to go through it together. So join me as we dive into Renegade Files, episode 67, The Trump Shooting, Thomas Matthew Crooks, and Many Questions. There is a vast amount of information here, and putting it into some kind of order is the challenge. In general, I'm going to go through things in a chronological order as best I can, and then try to cover all the pertinent points we can gather from official sources, such as the hearings with the recently retired director of the U.S. Secret Service, and many more recent things like the congressional hearing with FBI Director Christopher Wray. I'll be sourcing material from things like news reports, video footage of the scene, photos taken after the fact, overhead maps, information of that nature. Along the way, we'll try to figure out who Thomas Matthew Crooks was and investigate the shifting accounts of what he was like, see what we can find out about his family or his background, and we'll look into some seemingly shady dealings surrounding a few large organizations that may have had prior knowledge of the shooting, and the connections those organizations have to all of this, and it gets bizarre. So we'll start with a timeline leading up to the rally and then unfolding into the shooting on July 13th. Then we'll have to leave the timeline format behind, and I'll just rant through the other points, because there are so many things happening in the days following the shooting. I'll verify things the best I can, and if I'm speaking of speculations, I'll let you know. So, let's do it. In the afternoon, on Saturday, July 13th, 2024, former president and candidate for the 2024 presidential election, Donald Trump, addressed an outdoor crowd at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. Prior to that, on July 3rd, a local newspaper reported that Trump would hold a rally at the fairgrounds on July 13th. If Thomas Matthew Crooks was the lone shooter, this gives him just 10 days to plan and prepare. 2 days after the news story of Trump's rally, we know Crooks visited the Clareton Sportsman's Club, where we know he was a member, and some news outlets have said he went there to practice shooting. And that is what you do there. Then on the morning before the shooting, Crooks bought a 5-foot ladder and 50 rounds of ammunition. Much has been made about this fact in the media because it implicates his intention to climb onto the roof and shoot Trump. But that roof is twice as high, and a 5-foot ladder was never found at the scene that I'm aware of. And yet, they reported that he bought a 5-foot ladder over and over. That same day, before the rally, Crooks visited the rally site and conducted surveillance by flying a drone around a pre-programmed route to survey the grounds and the stage location from the air. The Wall Street Journal reported that law enforcement were, quote, briefed on the matter. This is unreal. We're talking about on the day of the rally. He's able to go there and fly a drone around getting film and photos of the layout, no repercussions, no one does anything about it. He's basically allowed to do it. I would call this critical point of failure number 1. Donald Trump Jr. said that he was once stopped by the Secret Service from flying his own drone over the beach at Mar-a-Lago because his father was inside the house there. So later that day, after doing his drone recon, Crooks goes to the rally location a second time and is detained by security because his entry set off the metal detectors. Security discovered that he was carrying a rangefinder into the venue, but they allowed him to go in anyway. We'll call this critical point of failure number 2. This is incredibly suspicious. I mean, carrying a rangefinder is not a crime, but unless you're going golfing or hunting, it's suspicious. It isn't something most people just happen to have. And when we're talking about a former president speaking outdoors and all the security that implies, someone carrying a rangefinder is fishy, and letting him go into the grounds with it even more so. And here's another point on this subject. A few things are possible. Either he doesn't know the rangefinder will set off the metal detector, like he's too young and inexperienced so he just doesn't think about it. Or he doesn't care because he knows they'll let him in with it anyway, which they did. And why not? They already let him go there and fly a drone around. Who is the security person who let him in with the rangefinder? What are his or her connections and backgrounds? We don't know. Moving on. At 5:06, a spectator taking video captures footage of Crooks wandering around between a building and the outside perimeter of the rally. He looks to be surveying the ground and checking to see what lies between the stage and the building he's in front of. The trees, the crowds, the distances. I mean, he looks suspicious. He's walking around, he's looking back and forth. This is critical point of failure number 3. Then, at 5:45, a police officer with Beaver County sees Crooks walking around and looking at the rooftop of the AGR International building from which he would later fire. Crooks is not questioned and nothing is done. Critical point of failure number 4. 10 minutes later, at 5:55, the Secret Service is warned of a suspicious person wandering the area. This is presumably Crooks, and they classify him as a threat, but they still allow Trump to take the stage. Critical point of failure number 5. At 6:09, Crooks climbs to the AGR building rooftop. It's unclear whether he climbed with the rifle or if the rifle was already in place on the roof at this time. This is a building with a clear line of sight to the stage, and Crooks just gets up there unquestioned and unimpeded. Critical point of failure number 6. At 6:10 p.m., 12 seconds before the shooting, a spectator video shows policemen walking around the perimeter of the building Crooks was on. At this point, attendees begin to shout that someone is on the rooftop and that he has a gun. Before shots are fired, a policeman also scaled that roof, saw Crooks, and Crooks pointed his rifle at the officer. This caused the officer to retreat, and nothing further was done about Crooks at that time. This is unreal. And it's critical point of failure number 7. Trump started speaking at 6:05, and just 6 minutes later, multiple rifle shots rang out, killing one crowd member, Corey Comparatore, a firefighter from Sarver, Pennsylvania, also injuring 2 other spectators and hitting Trump in his right ear. Trump was rushed off stage by Secret Service agents as security officers on a rooftop behind the stage shot and killed the alleged gunman on a rooftop 150 yards away across a mowed grass field. Security agents then ascended to the rooftop where they found a dead gunman, his 5.56 assault rifle with no scope, a cell phone, a backpack, and some kind of transmitter device. Now, that rifle is essentially a .223 AR-15, although it isn't a brand name AR, and the 5.56 NATO ammunition differs very slightly from the .223, in that one of them, I believe the 5.56, has a slightly thicker shell casing. And as I understand it, a 5.56 rifle can fire .223 ammo, but a .223 AR can't fire 5.56 ammo. But you can modify the barrel of an AR to do so. So this is why the media keeps saying that the rifle was an AR-style rifle, because it wasn't technically an AR-15, but it is, for all practical purposes, a very similar weapon. Initial reports told us that the shooter had no identification on him, so they had to do DNA analysis and try to identify the shooter in other ways. Before we move on, let's just review our 7 critical points of failure. These are times that security had the opportunity to prevent the shooting but failed to do so. Number 1, no one stops Crooks from visiting the site the morning of the shooting, or actually just 4 hours before either the shooting or the gates open, I'm not sure, but on that same day, and doing surveillance with a drone flying over the grounds. Number 2, he's let into the grounds with a rangefinder that they know he has. Number 3, he's allowed to skulk around the area alone, looking at the buildings, rooftops, trees, and the crowd, and no one stops him or questions him. Admittedly, this is the most innocent of his behaviors and maybe the weakest critical point of failure. Number 4, a Beaver County law enforcement officer sees Crooks walking around and looking at the rooftop of the AGR International building from which he would later shoot. Crooks isn't questioned and nothing is done, so this is a bit more suspicious. That building is outside of the rally. This isn't just some spectator looking at trees or whatever. It's strange, and he's just allowed to do it. Number 5. The Secret Service is warned of a suspicious person wandering the area. They classify him as a threat, but still allow Trump to take the stage. Number 6. Crooks climbs onto the roof unquestioned and with no problems. How is this possible? It's a metal building and police are inside it. I have a metal roof here at the Jungle Villa outpost, and from inside, a squirrel running across that roof sounds like a horse. Secret Service agents are guarding a former president 150 yards away, and this kid can just climb up onto the roof with a rifle? With police inside that same building? That's unreal. Number 7. 12 seconds before the shooting, a spectator video shows policemen walking around the perimeter of the building Crooks was on. Rallygoers start to shout that someone is on the rooftop and that he has a gun. A policeman climbs up there, sees Crooks. Crooks points his gun at the guy, and the officer just climbs back down and nothing is done about it. 12 seconds later, one guy is killed, 2 people are shot and injured, and Trump is shot in the ear. A close call if there ever was one. He turned his head to look at a chart, and the bullet hit his ear because of that turn. That is too close for comfort. So that's 7 opportunities, and 6 blatant ones, where the Secret Service and local law enforcement had the chance to stop Crooks and they did not. Not once, but 7 times. And recall that I said I'd tell you if I get into speculation. Well, here it is. I know law enforcement people, and the Secret Service is supposed to be one of the most elite security organizations in the world. They can't be that incompetent. It seems like they let the guy do all of this, or let him up there to take the fall for whomever else really took those shots. He had iron sights and no scope from 150 yards. Not an impossible shot, but a hard one to say the least. Especially for a 20-year-old civilian with no formal weapons training that we know of. He worked at a nursing home. He was never in trouble, never arrested, and as the news tells us, never sued. No overtly political opinions that we know of. He didn't leave any manifestos or letters telling us why he was going to try to kill the former president. That's unusual for an assassin. At 11 p.m., Crooks' father reported to local authorities that his son was missing, along with a rifle from his home. Some reports have Crooks' father reporting him missing with the rifle before the shooting. So, this is the first of a long list of conflicting reports. At 1:20 a.m., the FBI identified the shooter as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, who had been living with his parents in a nearby town. And then begins an odd list of contradictory reports. Friends of his from school told reporters that Thomas Matthew Crooks was constantly bullied in school for wearing camo to class, and that he had tried out for the school rifle shooting team but failed because he was such a bad shot. Then the school released a statement saying he had never been bullied and that he had never tried out for the shooting team, and this was according to their own records. We were told that he was a registered Republican, but we were also told that he had donated $15 to a progressive initiative to increase voter registration among Democrats. What Republican does that? And how did they know? Did he have the receipt? It's just strange. We were told that he rode his bike to the rally, but he lives 42 miles away. Who is he, Lance Armstrong? But then FBI officials tell us they found explosives in his car at the rally. So which is it? Did he ride a bike there or did he drive his car? We were also told that there was a van there, filled with explosives. Presumably he drove that. What's next? He Ubered there? Finally, we were told that Crooks had gone on the video streaming platform Steam and said, quote, "July 13th will be my debut. Watch it unfold." End quote. The FBI said that that was true. Then they changed their story and said that it was from a fake account and that Crooks never said that. So before the FBI says it's true, they don't check to see if the account is real? Weird. I have a strong intuition about this kind of reporting in the mainstream media. It isn't to give us information about the story. It's to give us talking points to argue about, to disagree with each other. They tell us a bunch of conflicting stories, so we argue over whether he rode a bike or drove a car, or was a Democrat or a Republican. Was he bullied or was he not bullied? Did he try out for the shooting team? Did he not try out for the shooting team? He was a good shot, he was a terrible shot. It's all theater for the masses. Then, almost immediately, we find out he was previously used as an actor in a BlackRock commercial. This is 100% true. You can see the commercial online. BlackRock is the world's largest asset manager, with the company controlling between $7 and $9 trillion. They control things like pension funds and large stock investment funds. BlackRock has clashed with Republican leadership in recent years because of the asset firm's positions on things like ESG policies. They impose these on companies they do business with. ESG stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance, and it refers to a set of standards used to measure an organization's perceived environmental and social impact. BlackRock donates enormous amounts of money to lobbyists and politicians on both sides of the aisle. So a BlackRock ad from 2022 filmed at Bethel Park High School features several up-close shots of an easily identifiable Thomas Matthew Crooks. After the assassination attempt, BlackRock immediately removed the ad where they had it streaming or posted and disavowed any connection to Crooks, saying he was a student who ended up in the ad, and he was never paid by them, and he was never an employee of theirs. But then we find out that BlackRock has connections to the company that has recently purchased the AGR building from which Crooks allegedly shot. But then again, they do own $9 trillion in assets, so it's conceivable that they would own many buildings. But we also know BlackRock is the majority shareholder in a company called Austin Private Wealth, and that one day before the shooting, Austin Private Wealth shorted Trump's company, which trades on NASDAQ under the symbol DJT. They shorted it to the tune of 12 million shares. A short is basically a stock market bet that the price will go down. This short position was the largest ever taken by Austin Private Wealth, and it represented over 6% of their entire portfolio. So the company stands to gain a great deal if DJT stock dives as a result of his being killed, which it would have, and then when he survives, that stock actually jumps 45%. APW, that's Austin Private Wealth, is then somehow able to convince the investment company that fronted the short to release them from the contract. And in the world of finance, this is unheard of. Of course, they say it was just a coincidence that they shorted the stock that day, one day before the shooting. Maybe it was. But the coincidences just pile up around this story. So BlackRock featured the shooter in a commercial they made 2 years ago. They have connections to the building he was on, and one of their companies shorted DJT stock the day before the shooting. That company's largest short ever, 12 million shares. Maybe, like they say, those are all coincidences, but regardless, they are the facts. And although he's 20 years old, we only ever see a high school yearbook picture of him, looking all zit-dotted, wearing glasses and an American flag shirt, an innocent grin. The guy on the roof had long hair, so we have no pictures of him for 2 years since he graduated high school. Then there are many spectators who say they saw someone on top of the nearby water tower. The top of that structure is the best place for an assassin, and at the same time, for the same reasons, it's the best spot for a Secret Service sniper. And there is video of what people are saying is a shooter in black on top of the water tower at the exact moments of the shooting, but those videos are so blurry, they make pictures of Bigfoot look like 4K HD. It doesn't mean there was no person up there, though. As people have said, this gets into the how many shots were fired questions. Some agents say 5, some say 8, and some say 9. At this point, the most official accounts and consensus of audio analysis indicates 8 shots. We have the FBI director recently saying when testifying to Congress that he doesn't know if Trump was hit by a bullet or shrapnel. This caused a flurry of comments online saying Trump wasn't even shot. That's insane. You see him get shot in the ear on video. They act like it's nothing. Oh, he was only hit by shrapnel. Yeah, from a guy shooting at his head. And what if it were shrapnel? Shrapnel from what? A spitball? No, from an AR-15. A 5.56 NATO round, to be exact. Anyway, both Fox News and the New York Times did video and audio analysis, and both of them concluded that Trump was shot in the ear with one of the bullets fired. Maybe the first time those two have agreed in quite a while. We also have reports of a van loaded with explosives and found parked under the water tower. And Crooks had a detonator transmitter with him on the roof, so it seems like he was going to blow up the water tower after he shot Trump. They also say there were explosives in his car. And this is once again a lot of vague language. They don't say it was a bomb in his car. Explosives could be a lot of things. It could be a can of gasoline. This is crazy because it makes the case that Crooks was up there as a patsy, maybe told to shoot some blanks as part of a training exercise or some operation for the Secret Service. This is just me speculating again, but if the real shooter was on the water tower and he takes Trump out, then poor little Crooks shoots a few bullets or blanks and then presses the red button on the remote once the tower shooter climbs down, then all that evidence is gone. So they find a van under the water tower loaded with explosives. Who drove that there if Crooks acted alone? This kid was riding bikes, driving cars, and driving vans, and climbing onto line-of-sight rooftops, all under the noses of the Secret Service. Also, that van matches the description of one previously owned by Maxwell Yerick's father, and it has Arizona plates. Yerick is from Arizona. Oh, wait a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Who is Maxwell Yerick? Stay tuned. We'll get to him in a minute. So this 20-year-old kid, I say, because I'm an old guy, works at a nursing home and has never been overtly political or even opinionated. He outmaneuvers and outwits the most elite security force in the world. Also, Congressman Mike Waltz indicated that, according to an FBI briefing, Crooks had 3 encrypted cell phone accounts overseas. That's beyond unusual. He was able to position his car with explosives in it and a van with explosives under the water tower and evade the Secret Service for basically an entire day. Flying drones around, coming into a speaking event with a rangefinder, and he gets 8 shots off at a former president. 8 shots. We never hear anything from or about the parents until we get one quote from the father who says, "We're just trying to figure out what the hell is going on." That sounds like desperation and exasperation, and you can only read so much into one sentence like that. Then a video surfaces of 2 people, and we're told that they are his parents, or at least one is said to be the father. That video shows a heavyset man wearing all black shorts and a shirt, together with a very slight companion, also in all black, but in long pants, a hoodie with the hood up, and a COVID-era face mask. The two are exiting a grocery store, the man pushing a cart totally filled with grocery bags, probably $300 worth of groceries if I'm to guess. And the person filming asks if they can tell us anything about their son, and the man says something along the lines of he will issue a statement when his lawyers advise him to. The smaller person puts one of the many bags into the back of a red SUV and then closes the back door, and the video ends. Now, here we go into some speculation, but for some reason, my first reaction was that skinny person with the hood up and face mask on could actually be Thomas Matthew Crooks. I know it sounds crazy, but crazier things have happened. I haven't heard anyone else say that, which is weird. Of course, it could be anyone. The mom, a friend, I don't know. Just anyone who doesn't want to be seen on camera. It could be the mom, I guess. But if that's the case, the father doesn't seem to care about being seen. If that is the father. Both parents were licensed social workers. Then we hear from Representative Eli Crane when interviewing the state police commissioner, Colonel Paris. And Crane says that when agents initially searched Thomas Matthew Crooks' home, that the home had no silverware, no trash, and was extremely clean, like a medical lab is what he says. The police commissioner said he'd not been given any of those details, and the representative said that it was interesting. The Crooks house is 42 miles from the rally location. So this is weird. We've seen photos of the parents, I guess mainly or perhaps only the father, and the house looks like a totally normal, small, Midwestern single-story house. Maybe it's 3 bedrooms. We see the father buying tons of groceries. I get that. Maybe he wants to go out as little as possible because he's trying to stay out of the public eye. He did ask one reporter to basically leave the family alone and give them their space. I understand that. But how then does he live in a house with no silverware and no trash, and that's as spotless as a medical lab? That sounds so odd. Like this was some kind of safe house or a front or something. And both parents are social workers. This seriously starts to get MK Ultra vibes. Before we go on, I want to tell you a few things I've seen and read that I cannot verify. First is a story linked to an organization called the Heritage Foundation. People have claimed that this foundation tracked a cell phone that made numerous visits back and forth between Thomas Matthew Crooks' home and offices near the FBI and the Secret Service in Washington, D.C. I looked all over the Heritage Foundation website and I can't find anything about that. I think they would have posted it themselves if that story were true, so it probably isn't. So recall that we previously mentioned a person named Maxwell Yerrick, whose father owned a van that matches the van of explosives they removed from under the water tower on the day of the shooting. That van from Arizona, where this Maxwell Yerrick is also from. Or the tags were from Arizona. Well, Maxwell Yerrick is an alleged Antifa activist. He has long brown hair and large gauge ear piercings. Or he used to. I think he had them sewn back up. He was arrested in 2016 following an altercation with police while protesting Trump's visit in Pittsburgh, and he was sentenced for up to 12 months after pleading guilty to assault. People say the pictures of the deceased Thomas Crooks on the rooftop, taken by security personnel body cams, look far more like Maxwell Yerrick than Crooks, with people pointing out what look like large gauge earring repair surgery creases in the deceased ears, tattoos on that person's arms that Crooks does not have, and a mole on that guy's neck which matches Yerrick's but doesn't appear in photos of Crooks. Also, the shape of his ears seemed to match Urich's and not Crooks. Another thing I noticed, the others have pointed this out as well, is the fact that the blood on the shooter's face looks really dried, as if he had been killed long before, and not mere seconds ago before the team scaled the roof after the shooting. Also, it seems unlikely that Crooks would crawl in a prone position across a metal warehouse roof on what has been described as a very hot day wearing shorts. Medic reports list several people treated that day for heat exhaustion. That's a small thing, but it's a detail that makes you think. Then we have photos of another man being arrested or detained at the rally shortly before the shooting. This person looks identical to Kenan Hooper. Kenan Hooper was arrested together with Urich at that 2016 Trump rally. So this, yet again, just a coincidence? I can't find any records of who the man in the photo being detained at the J13 rally is, but he does look exactly like Kenan Hooper. And the dead shooter on the roof does, to me, look exactly like Maxwell Urich, both of whom were arrested together at a Trump rally in 2016. I have tried to find out the current whereabouts of Maxwell Urich, but all I find online are fact-checking articles saying that it's not true that Urich was the real shooter. And I mean, there are a lot of those articles. One post on X described this phenomenon as fact check on overdrive. So Maxwell Urich had a Facebook page using the name Maxwell, and there are some pictures people grabbed from it before it was apparently taken down just days after the shooting. And one of the people who found the page and posted some information on X said that Maxwell Urich, being an Antifa activist, had previously used an alias. What was that alias? Maxwell Crooks. And here's another thing. Apparently Maxwell Urich had a Facebook page, and it was taken down days after the shooting. Have you ever canceled a Facebook page? It takes a long time for that page to come down, unless there's some way to do it that I don't know. It doesn't just turn right off. I guess maybe there, like I said, there could be a way. And does anyone else find it suspicious that CNN actually live streamed the Trump rally on July 13th, when in the past they have consistently refused to even cover any of Trump's rallies, and in most cases never air his speeches, opting instead to present selected sound bites after the fact? But this rally where Trump is shot and very nearly killed, CNN just happens to live stream that entire event and do so for their first time. And the BBC and Al Jazeera also both live stream that rally for their first times as well. Is that odd? I'm just asking. And at the exact same time, we have the largest healthcare and transportation system crash in history. This happening the 2 days right before the assassination attempt, where a Windows update stops flights and freezes hospital records and interrupts 911 call centers literally across the globe. The company that caused this outage by incorrectly updating a critical Windows component or uploading an update with a bug in it, the whole thing is unclear, but anyway, the company responsible for this is CrowdStrike. Who are they? Well, CrowdStrike has been in the news before. They were one of the main investigators who claimed that the 2016 cyber attack on the Democratic National Convention was the work of the Russians, and CrowdStrike also concluded that Russians leaked the 2016 DNC emails. They also claimed incessantly that the Russians colluded to help Trump win in 2016, but the Mueller report and the Attorney General at the time found that that was not the case. It's pretty common knowledge now that the Russian collusion was disinformation. So this is CrowdStrike, who in the 2 days before Trump is shot, accidentally creates the largest airline travel, 9/11 call center, and medical record outage in history. Some call this a distraction. Others call it, once again, a coincidence. Then, a week after the failed assassination attempt on July 21st, 2024, Biden drops out. So now we have the confusion of that, coupled with the overnight media retconning of Kamala Harris from party poison to beloved savior. So I think this is going to wrap it up for now. As for summarizing this episode, there's a lot going on here. 2 people are dead after all of this. Corey Comparatore and Thomas Matthew Crooks, if that's who was up there, and President Trump and 2 bystanders wounded by gunfire. The director of the Secret Service resigned after getting grilled cheesed by the Congress. First of all, let's not forget that regardless of who did this, someone alone or not, whomever was responsible, their goal and mission was to kill Donald Trump. We still talk about him and see him in the news doing this or that, and the debates around what he's doing fill the screens. We act like it's business as usual for him and us, but the reality is they did try to kill him. An inch or less and he would be dead. What would be going on if that had happened? So the fact that someone tried and came within an inch of killing a former president and current presidential candidate is astonishing if you let that sink in. We become so jaded in the modern world. As for who was behind all of this, it's a monumental question. Either the Secret Service was aware, involved, or staggeringly incompetent. A 20-year-old with no stated motive can fly around a drone at a Secret Service controlled location the same day that a former president, being protected by that same Secret Service, is securing the site. And that same kid could get into the rally with a rangefinder that they know he has. Then multiple people, including police, report that person's behavior as suspicious to the Secret Service, including seeing him eyeing a roof and range-finding the distances toward the stage. Law enforcement officers are inside the building he climbs on top of. Metal roof. No one sees him or hears him, until a policeman does see him, but just climbs back down because he points a gun at him. And then a Secret Service sniper from a window in the adjacent building also sees him, actually takes a picture of him. People in the crowd see him. They yell that he's on the roof and he has a gun, but nothing happens. Then this 20-year-old with a rifle with no scope allegedly shoots 8 shots from 150 yards away, kills a guy, injures 2 others, hits Trump in the ear just as Trump turned his head to look at a chart. Trump himself said that chart saved his life. This shooter on top of a roof with a clear line of sight to the stage where Trump is, across a mowed grass field. A perfect spot to shoot from. And he not only gets up there, he gets up there with a NATO 5.56 rifle, which is basically an AR-15, and a backpack, and a cell phone, and a remote control for detonating explosives. Presumably after positioning his car and a van, both containing explosives, he gets off 8 shots before they stop him. When they find his car with explosives in it and a van parked under a nearby water tower, also filled with explosives, a water tower that spectators say was the location of a second shooter, and some even filmed a person up there. We hear the director of the Secret Service tell us they didn't have an agent on that particular rooftop from where Crooks was shot because the roof was sloped and that made it too dangerous. But the snipers that did get Crooks did so from a rooftop with a slope twice as steep. I could go on, and we've covered all this. It's just crazy, though. I will say this. We're living in different times now. We have to sift through tons of garbage, but that's fine because we also have access to mountains of credible information. We can go back and watch congressional hearings over and over. We can hear audio from something like the Trump shooting and analyze it. We can compare notes and ideas with endless people online and in person and figure things out we would have had to rely on the old newsroom talking heads to tell us in the old days. Not only that, this isn't our first rodeo. I've studied the JFK assassination for years, for my entire adult life. I know what a setup and a tidy cleanup looks like. Like Joe Rogan said, it looks like that. No one can talk to Thomas Matthew Crooks now. He's gone. We'll never know what was in his mind on that day. That's assuming he's the only shooter. A 20-year-old with no real backstory climbs a roof with cops and Secret Service agents all over the place, shoots at a former president and a current presidential candidate in broad daylight, kills an innocent spectator and injures 2 others. 7 times they could have stopped in that day, but they let him go again and again. They let him climb onto that roof. How? Why? Who? Think about this. If he had hit Trump in the head, 1 turn of the face sooner, Thomas Matthew Crooks would be just as dead right now, and we would have the same lack of answers about who he is or what his deal was. At this point, Congress, the FBI, and Homeland Security are all conducting investigations into the events that day. Maybe they'll let us know what they find. Thank you sincerely for joining me on this episode. Be sure to check out our other Renegade Files episodes and explore the deepest covert stories where logic clashes with the official narratives. Help Renegade Files stay independent and free by visiting patreon.com/renegadefiles through the link in the show notes or on our website at therenegadefiles.com. On our Patreon page, you can get bonus episodes and tons of other content. Try it for free for a whole week, cancel anytime, and if you stay, you can help me for just a few bucks, which makes a huge difference in helping me exist as an independent content creator. So thanks, and thank you to you if you're already an RFA agent on Patreon. You make the show possible. I am so glad to have you as part of the Renegade Files crew. Until we meet again on the next episode, I'm your host, Lex Gordon. Stay wild, rogue child.